depending on where you're joining from today. Thank you for joining our weekly live podcast interview. This is a weekly interview series where we talk to people about things related to digital transformation. And today we are going to talk about data management and governance in digital transformation. So we're going to talk about all things data and what it means and how it relates to digital transformations, how you can incorporate data management into your overall digital strategy. So I'm excited for our guests here today, and I'm excited for this topic. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. We help clients define their digital strategies. We help them select software, and we help them implement whatever system or systems they might be deploying. Like I said, this is a weekly live podcast series. It's part of our Transformation Ground Control podcast. So what we do is we do this live production with you all, with the live audience. We take questions from you, and then we edit this. We add more content to it, and then we release it as a standalone podcast episode that will be released in 2 to 3 weeks from tomorrow. Every Wednesday, there's new episodes of that podcast. It's called Transformation Ground Control. You can go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to learn more about that. And then lastly, we are going to take audience questions. So whatever streaming platform that you're listening to or watching today, we would love to hear your questions or comments as it relates to the topic here today. Please drop those in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on the streams across all the platforms. We're streaming to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter X, and Twitch here today. So thank you, everyone, for joining. And I'd also, speaking of the chat, love to hear where you're all joining from today. Love to see where this global community is joining us from. We tend to get people from all over the world, so it's always fun to see where everyone's joining from today. So if you don't mind, just drop it in the chat. What city and country are you joining from today? We'd love to hear from you. I myself am joining from Denver, Colorado in the U.S. today, and our guest is in India, and I'll let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his company. But again, today's topic, data management and governance and digital transformation. Joining me to unpack this topic in more detail is Dr. Imad Syed from PiLog. He's a co-CEO of PiLog. So Dr. Syed, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, Rick. I'm excited to be here, and I'm going to just believe that we're going to have a great discussion.
Yes, I'm very excited for today's discussion. You and I had a chance to meet at a conference a few weeks ago, and we had the idea of, hey, let's talk about this topic here in our podcast, and we're excited to have you here and excited to collaborate with you on this. But before I jump in and start asking you all these questions I have for you about data management, data governance, tell us a little bit about yourself and about PiLog, if you don't mind.
Myself, Imad Syed, I started my journey as a data engineer or a system engineer at PiLog nearly 22, 23 years ago. I stopped counting that because it has been, very long, very long. It makes me feel that I'm old, but I'm becoming wiser every day because data is something that I loved from day one. And I knew that the future is going to be built on data. And without data, I mean, you cannot even take a breath these days. No enterprise can even take a deep breath without talking about data.
Right.
So I started as a system engineer and then grown up into an architecture role as well as the director of information technologies. So I now currently handle both the portfolios, which is the products, all the products, data products that we are building, the governance products, as well as I'm looking after the executive role of PiLog as well, along with my other colleagues because I'm the co-CEO of PiLog Group.
Gotcha.
So I'm based out of Dubai. Mostly, you can find me in Middle East, hopping in and out between the other countries of Middle East. But I also frequently visit India, which is our labs, data labs, as well as the R&D labs here, where the magic happens.
Right. So your boots on the ground, seeing all this stuff in real time, and very interesting. So tell us a little bit about, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about maybe a little bit more about PiLog and what you guys do as a company there.
Yeah. See, my existence is because of PiLog, because that's what I feel. Because PiLog has been in the market for nearly 29 years. So next year, probably in next 2 years, we'll turn 30 years in the market, and that's actually long-standing for any organization to survive. But we have been waiting for our turn because those days when we started with the data practices, data governance, data quality, nobody used to even give any attention to us. In fact, leave about attention. They were not even interested to listen to anything that we were talking about. But there were some great minds, great organizations who thought that probably this could be the next big thing, and they started giving us, that kind of attention. And especially in Middle East, we tasted our success. We originated out of South Africa, Centurion, and then in 2001 we moved to Middle East. Our chairman being a very, very visionary person, he said that, guys, if we can't do something in this part of the world, let's go to the Middle East where we have deep pockets, and Middle East has got always deep pockets. So we started our stuff. But what we also did is we said, since we have seen and experienced the market without any practices and without any quality, we went back to ISO and we said that let us bring in some of the standards of the data quality or information quality, and we started contributing to that. So on one side we were actually talking about the standards to the end users and to the implementers, but the other side we were also contributing in developing those standards. So that was actually the wonderful thing for us, because whatever we were learning from the market, we used to go back and we say that probably this is something that you need to include as part of the standard. And today, if you look at it, we have invested it heavily into ISO 29000 to 8000 to 745, a lot of standards. So if you have to summarize it, PiLog is a data quality and governance company implementing the practices as per ISO standards, and that is how I summarize, PiLog.
Right. Well, that's great. Well, it sounds like you're the perfect person to have this conversation to talk about data management, data governance, since that's really what we're honing in on here today. But before we sort of dive into some of these questions around data management and governance, what can you tell us about? Could you sort of give us a high level starting point of what, why data management and data governance is so critical to the success of ERP projects? And maybe you could start by, if you don't mind, maybe to describe how data management and governance is different than just data
Yeah,
migration.
yeah. See, now let me tell you something that I don't like the data management term itself, Eric, because anybody can manage the data. Any
Right.
practice can manage it. What I like is data quality management. I like it because unless you see a quality in the data, I mean, you are not at all managing it, it is managing itself. So when I say data quality management, and that's the foundation for any organization, any data that is not in shape, from all the 12 dimensions perspective, bringing it into the right practice, that's the data quality establishment or management. But what is the practice? What is the authority? What is the know-how or the rules around that is actually the data governance. So many a times we see a lot of people, even still, they are confused between data management and data governance. Yeah, we are doing it, but have you really implemented a solution that governs with the right rules and with the right authority over the data elements? Probably yes or no. I mean, there are a lot of organizations who differ with this. But I would like to say that it's a data quality and the governance. I mean, and data management probably at a higher level, looking into various things around that, but it is actually the data quality and data governance. And PiLog is best with both of them. Data quality is something that, maybe the qualitative data for you could be different from me. So it is a fit for purpose kind of, data. And that's where the data quality comes in. And there's a beautiful definition in ISO 8000 that the data that fits the requirements is the data quality. A simple data that fits the requirements. So it is fit for purpose. And many people feel that, sorry, you do not have all this personal data, so data quality is bad. But probably the fit for purpose is different than what exactly is required for that use case. So each use case would have a different data quality, and that's what we believe. That's where we bring in a lot of taxonomies, a lot of templates, and we say that same asset, you classify it as a product, you have a different data quality requirement, whereas as an asset, it has got a different data quality requirement. And that's where we are a little bit different from what generic statements states about data quality.
Interesting. So yeah, that is interesting. So you're sort of putting a different spin on a little bit of a more vague term like data management. You're talking about quality
Yeah,
management. I like how you talk about fit for purpose too.
yeah,
I want
yeah,
to come
yeah.
back to that a little bit too. I'm going to ask some more follow-up questions on that. But before I continue on with a few more questions, just want to say hello to everyone joining here today. Thank you for dropping in the chat where you're joining from. We have a lot of people joining from several people from India, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, um, England, Johannesburg, South Africa. We've got people all over the world here today. Dubai, more people from Dubai. even Wisconsin in the U.S., South Dakota in the U.S. So people joining from all over. So thank you for being here today. Um, so as we get into this, here's a quick comment I'll share with you from Shukat on LinkedIn. It says data quality management has 12 dimensions. Governance is around it. Both complement each other. And so I want to come back to that as well. That's a great point. So when we start thinking about data governance within our overall digital strategy, I mean, how should we be? Do you have any tips on how to be thinking about data management and how you can start building that into your overall digital transformation strategy or your ERP strategy?
Yeah. See, the data governance can start in two stages. One could be a green field, or one could be a brown field. In both the cases, you have a different approach. If it is, if you're sitting with a lot of legacy data, it's a headache, but also that what kind of patterns are there as part of your data so that you can establish the governance rules. But if you are starting on a clean state, you can go with, the benchmarks, whatever those benchmarks that are available. So both of them have got different opportunities, different, purposes of it. But when I personally believe, and in fact, we have experienced over 2 decades that any data that is coming out of non-governed or ungoverned systems, that is what is actually creating a lot of nonsense.
Mm,
So it's not, you could have a great data governance capabilities, but any data that is feeding into it from a non-governed solution, which does not match the rules that has to, then it is a mess. And when does that happen? Eric, you know it very well. We talk about M&A, mergers and acquisition, one of
right.
the worst case to handle, because each one have got probably a different business problem, probably a different use case, probably different systems, and you are trying to marry both of them. Both does not come from the same world. Both have got different practices, and establishing governance rules by controlling both of them is a difficult thing. Whereas data migrations, I mean, you were just mentioning also about data migrations. I say that data migrations are the best opportunity for any organization to correct the course of action with regards to their data strategy. And
Mm,
if they miss that opportunity, I don't think that how often that would come, because I do not see these digital transformations happening in less than 10 years. So you are going to miss out that opportunity for at least a decade or decade and a half. And don't miss out on that opportunity. If you really want to bring in governance, that's the best time for you.
right. Yeah, and you bring up a good point too, which is that you can clean your data, you can get it perfect the way it should be, but it's us humans that end up creating
Yeah,
nonsense, as you put it.
absolutely.
It's us that messes
Absolutely.
up the data and makes it inaccurate, and then
Absolutely.
you start thinking about how does that affect my reporting and my analytics, my AI efforts. If I'm trying to incorporate
Right.
generative AI
Right.
or learn
Right.
language
Right.
models, all that stuff, or large language models,
Yeah.
then you're not gonna be able to do it. If you don't have good data governance to keep the data accurate and to really treat it as an asset that needs to be focused on quality, as you mentioned.
Right, right, right. Let me tell you one interesting fact there. I have seen a lot of organizations, maybe 3 out of 10 organizations, they said that we have a digital dashboards. Okay, I said, fantastic. You go into their digital boardroom, you would see a lot of dashboards. Okay, where's the data coming from? Yeah, it's our transactional data. You see so many transactions, but they have not implemented the right master data and metadata, and they are believing those transactions that are generated out of inaccurate master and metadata, and they are making decisions on that, and they call themselves that we are digitally transformed. Yes,
Mm,
if you have not established the foundation, which is the master and the metadata, then how can you actually build any reporting engine around that? And you are making all those decisions based on your data, but it is skewed. It's not accurate. So that's why we always say that have metadata as the centric thing, like very simple thing. Let's suppose we have a personal data, but your weight. I mean, weight of a person is not mentioned as kg or lb, and it says 73. What is it? So without metadata, it's nothing. I mean, 73 makes no sense at all. Or a height, or if it does not have the right currency, you say, yeah, $300, but which bucks? I mean, which currency? So the metadata is important. And once you have that metadata, then it brings the value to it. And that's
mm,
what ISO 8000 talks about. And the master data is built on the foundation of metadata, and transactions are built out of the combination of meta and the master data. People miss that thing. They say that, okay, let me just clean all the transaction data. Let me see how many transactions I've done, how many orders I have generated, how much spend I have done. But what is your classification? Your classification itself is wrong. So I mean that still surprises me. I'm sure people are learning, but again, these digital transformations make no sense unless you actually correct the foundation.
Right. Right. Here's a comment from Tola on YouTube says, LOL, cute yet not accurate data. Yep, that hits home. So it sounds like Tola can relate to that concept there. Um, that's really interesting. Now, what are some of the other data related challenges that companies face when they're implementing a new, say, enterprise technology system like an ERP system or other type of enterprise wide technology? What are some of the common challenges that you see?
See, one of the common challenges is that they don't know the scope of the data that they must carry forward. And always, Eric, what they do is they take all the baggage with them. And that's why if you now look at SAP's Rise with SAP program, they say that drop your baggage, don't bring all your legacy, don't bring keep it clean. Core should be clean. And that's the biggest challenge. And you know what is it? Because that data has been created a decade ago. And who created, we don't know. Why it was created, we don't know. But we want to carry that baggage into future.
Mm,
How can it be future? I mean, it has filed your past already, and you want to carry the data set forward. So the scope is important, what you want to take it forward. And that's the reason we have defined a criteria. And we are almost, I think, 9 out of 10 of our projects, we are part of the data strategy. We tell them, don't carry everything. They say, no, I'm going to lose it. Don't worry, you will not have any interruption into the business. The most used data set is something that you must carry forward, and that must be mapped with the right KDS. And we'll talk a little bit more about KDS, because everybody says that now I'm moving from ECC to S4 HANA, or I'm moving from older ERP system to the newer system. But newer system need to have the newer classification, newer taxonomy, newer hierarchy. If it does not have that, then why are you actually carrying the old thing? I mean, it is not at all a digital transformation. So that's why our philosophy is very easy. The tools that we build is that connect. It's not that I will give you in Excel. No, no, no. We will connect directly to the source,
mm,
because then we know that whether it's the right data or not. It's not somebody is throwing you the Excel files or the text files saying that, okay, this is the data, we must take it forward. No, connect to the source system, collect the data, consolidate the data, and then profile the data, look at the data maturity assessment, then move it forward.
mm.
Otherwise, don't do it. Don't do it.
What's the more common approach that you see clients take? Do they start with a clean core where they basically start over without having much data brought over, or do you see more organizations that decide to take all that baggage, as you call it, that baggage that
Yeah.
needs to be cleaned up and fixed and remapped to these new hierarchies and all the stuff you just mentioned? Which is the more
Right.
common path? Do you see a more common or
The
more
the more
successful path?
common path is they carry the legacy. I mean, that's the more common path. But their intention was not. I mean, when they started the project, because we attend the kickoff meeting, they said that, guys, we are not going to take this legacy data. We are going to take only clean. But in the due course of the decisions that they are making at a different level, who does not understand all of that? They, no, no, I want this one, I want this one, I want this one, and they overload and overkill that project. And that's where the projects are failing. And they say that, guys, you should have advised it. We said that's why we are now writing in bold. Keep it clean. Take only the core data. Don't take all the baggage. I mean, I just yesterday had a discussion wherein I advised that, guys, it's only 40 to 50% of your data that you can take forward. The rest of it, if somebody wants it, let them create it.
Mm,
Because Eric, it is better to create at this point in time with a newer version rather than carrying something. Yeah, no, I will lose my transactions. Don't worry about it. You can always map the transaction data, because transaction data is not changing. It is an event that has happened. You just have to map it and take it forward.
right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you know, I'm curious to hear you here too, though. Like, what are some of the ways that companies can address some of these data quality issues and address the baggage that they have with their
Yeah.
old legacy data? How can they address those data quality issues in their legacy systems before they
Mm.
migrate to a new system? I mean, what are some of the steps that they would take?
Yeah. We built a couple of models, Eric, because it's a repetitive problem. It's not something that is once in a year we are seeing. Almost we see it. So we build models. There are two models that we build. One is data health assessment, which means that how good is your data? And we are not telling that it is matured enough for the target system. We are not saying how good is your data from a data quality. So you have all the data quality dimensions saying that this is how good it is. And if you really want to make it mature, which is data maturity assessment, then this is what you need to do. So that's the approach that we are. So it will fill all the gaps. It will take, it will let you consider only the relevant data. It will also help you take the lean approach there, and that's the reason we always say that do a health assessment and extract only the data that will take you forward. And that's where the maturity of that particular data set would be easily migrated to the future system.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. Here's a comment from Ram on LinkedIn. Says value of metadata for business process management and agility of decision making is the essence of PiLog products and services. Thank you for your
Very good point. Let me just add something there. Um, Eric, you might have seen that many people are saying we are doing digital transformation, but if you are taking exactly the same process as that of your old system into the new system, then you are not doing digital transformation. You need to also do a process maturity assessment. You need to orchestrate it. You need to augment that because it's the era of AI. And if you are not augmenting with any AI models or anything within the process and cutting down the timeline or improving the quality of it or enriching it, then why are you doing it if you have to follow exactly the same process? So there must be some augmentation in terms of the process management as well, business process management.
right. Yeah, makes total sense. Here's a really interesting question that just came in on LinkedIn. I
Mhm.
apologize. I don't see the name of the person that's asking this, but it says, how can organizations effectively address tech debt in their legacy systems without compromising the pace of digital transformation? And what governance practices can support this? And I assume they're talking about from a data perspective.
Yeah. It's a vast question. Probably,
Very,
we can
very
we can
broad.
actually, give a webinar on that entire question. But so just to address some of those things, the governance practices that they are talking about, without losing the essence of it. We personally say that go with the lean governance practices. Don't overcomplicate it. I mean, tech is there always to enable you, empower you, but your governance processes should be easily adaptable. The moment you make your governance processes, very complex, users are not going to adapt it. And if there is a complex process, then bring in augmentation part of it so that you do not lose out on even the tech advantage of it. And if you don't take the tech advantage of that with the augmentation, then you are actually overloading the human, empowerment there, and then asking the humans to do a lot more things which they won't be able to do it. And that's why these complex governance processes fails.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Now, what about speaking of coming back to data governance again and some of the pitfalls of data governance? What are some of the typical pitfalls in data governance during ERP implementations, and how can organizations avoid some of those challenges? I know you talked about the legacy data and
Yeah.
making sure that you clean that up and revisit the hierarchies and the mapping of it and everything. But what are some of the other
Right.
pitfalls that you see?
The other pitfall that I see is that stakeholder responsibility, and that's the common problem, because we say that customer data need to be taken care by the CRM, product owners, and if it is not being taken by them, again it's going to fail because the governance whatever you are putting in, they are the guys who will take it forward. And in the same way, if it is a supplier data that need to be taken care by the sourcing team, if it is not being taken care by the right stakeholder, then it's a problem. That's one. The second thing is also your accessibility to the data, and who is it that you are giving access to it, who is it you are protecting it, what is the data that must be mapped with which role. So it's a role-based access is something that need to be. And many a times what is expected from the end users is to fill all the data, whereas the approver just have to only click it. I mean, that's not it. That's not the right one. You need to have a federated governance practice. And if you are not, doing a federated governance, you are actually overkilling the process. So it's a fine balance. And again, probably for a customer master, you might have, three-level workflow, but maybe for finance master, you might have four or five levels of workflow, depending upon the sensitivity of the data. So all these things, I mean, we built a huge framework, Eric, for each data element, who must be the owner, who must govern it, who must approve it. Because, you cannot just say that, okay, let me just create it. I'm going through a governance process, system will take care of it. You also need human intervention because, the taxations, any other regulatory compliances and all those things need to be taken care. And you always need to bring in those stakeholders as part of your governance. And these are the general pitfalls why the governance fails.
Right. Yeah. Makes total sense. Here's a comment from LinkedIn. Great insights. Happy Diwali to the one celebrating. So happy Diwali to anyone that's celebrating
Okay.
that here today. And then from Alcinda, a comment from Alcinda on LinkedIn says, the scope of data to be carried over was a penny drop moment. We forget to assess the cost that comes with maintaining and storing legacy and irrelevant and outdated data during our digital transformation projects. So a great point there, Alcinda. And here's a question from Sarah on LinkedIn. Sarah says, you're suggesting that we should build the data from the bottom up rather than merge and purge. How do you capture the important data point in your bottom up approach? Through brainstorming, or is there a model that can be implemented? So how do you do that?
Yeah, it's involving the right stakeholders in the workshop. I mean, that is something we don't. And generally, the decisions for the data governance or data set scoping and all those things are made by high level guys who does not understand what kind of data it is, because it is those data stewards that must be involved. And that's the right way because they know what is it they are doing every day, what is it that they are capturing, what is it that they are facing difficulty with. And if you do not involve them and you say that, okay, I'm being a consultant, I'm telling you, this is the data set that you must determine, we fail. So, because at the end of the day, those are the guys who are going to suffer with it.
Right. Now, what about, here's another question that's really interesting from Kevin on LinkedIn. Kevin says, how does the integration of a robust master data management strategy within an ERP transformation program enhance data consistency, quality, and decision-making across the organization? And what are the potential risks of neglecting master data management in such an initiative? Because I think it's important to recognize there's really we're talking about two different types of data. You have your sort of your transactional data and
Yeah,
the more granular detailed data, but then you've got your master data, which is going to be more like
master.
your product masters, your customer masters,
Yeah,
vendor
yeah,
masters, all
yeah,
that stuff.
yeah,
So how do
yeah.
you, when it comes to master data management, which is that second bucket
Right.
I'm describing, how do you,
Yeah.
what are some of your thoughts there?
See now, if you look at the entire world, there are only two types of businesses. Either a company is buying product or a service or selling product or a service. There is no other business around the world. And the moment you are saying that you are buying a product or a service, both of them are master data. And yes, you could classify master data into a product data, item master, asset master, a lot of other stuff, and services into consulting services, other services. But those are the key elements of it. So you definitely need a multilingual, multi-domain data governance solution. You cannot just say that now I'm going to go with maybe product master, but probably if there are any augmented services around that, then you are missing out. And
Mhm.
even if you're going with a product master, then you do not have the suppliers or the vendors, then you are losing out. And if you have, product master and you are a large organization, if you do not have a people master or employee master, then you are losing out on it. So there are about 14 masters that we see that are interrelated in a large organization, and all those masters need to be actually maintained. And what we are seeing now, Eric, the trend is, especially in the Middle East, is that everybody earlier have focused only on material master or vendor master. Now they are focusing on asset master because they are seeing that even though we have the material master as well as the vendor master, but we are still procuring. Our plant is 10 years old. Why are we procuring it? We are manufacturing exactly the same thing. It's the same capacity. Why are we doing it? Because they have not actually captured all the assets and the bombs around that and the maintenance tasks around that. And they don't know whenever breakdown happens or whenever shutdown happens, they need to buy a lot of materials to do that. And they need right skill set for that. So all that is master data. So generally, what we do is whenever you are starting with a green project, we go there before even EPCs arrive on site. We say that, guys, give us all your engineering drawings, P and IDs, and that's actually a completely engineering work. It has nothing to do with taking some of the clerks to do some data or massage it. No, it's an engineering work. We take all the documents out of it. We identify all the assets. We identify the classification of the assets, maintenance of that, bill of materials, and that's where we come from, top down approach, because
Right.
you look at the asset and then come down. So from a master data management perspective, like what Kevin was mentioning, it has to be a multilingual. It has to have the augmented data quality. Eric, these days nobody has got time to go and look at all the validation themselves. If you are not adding AI to it, if you are not augmenting it, then your solution cannot fly. It will not even crawl.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's that's really interesting. That's a really important point of clarification. So thank you for that question and for that response, Doctor. That was a good summary of sort of master data management versus other types of data that you might be looking at too. Here's an interesting question from Uday on LinkedIn. Uday says, "How can organizations assess the ROI of data governance initiatives as part of their digital transformation journey?" Is this something that you've seen in the past or measured in the past, or
Yeah,
how
yeah,
do,
yeah, yeah,
how do we
yeah.
categorize that?
Eric, it's a very, very, tricky question asked by every management. What is the ROI? We must classify that into two types: tangible, intangible, because there's something tangible that you can easily look at it, such as if you take the product master and optimize it and remove the redundancy, then you know that what is the stock and immediately you can calculate it. And if you are registering the vendors, and then the vendor that is giving you with the least lead time and at the best price, you can easily do it. But there are services, the services generally, to say that maintenance of all the equipments, how much it is costing, probably $200,000, let's suppose. And what exactly are you doing? You have no clue about it, but you are prepared to pay that because you don't know what exactly that maintenance technician or a planner is doing on that, or an engineer is doing on that. So that's where what we did is we said that, be it anything, you have a template for that, and you capture the template so that you can compare a service provider to service provider and then look at what exactly is the savings for that. So your smart contracts management, your smart service management, bill of services, and all these things will give you enough room for calculating the ROI. And then the other thing is that data quality, you are not doing it just for proving that you have a right digital system. It is to beat the competition. Today, if you now look at it, why Amazon is Amazon? Why? Because they have been enforcing these data quality standards for over a decade now. That's why Amazon is Amazon. And there could be other guys, but they would never come closer to that, because the way they collect the data, the way that they put down everything around the data product is amazing. And that's the reason. And what about their competitors? Probably they also have it, but maybe they are not doing it so much. So the ROI here itself is not directly proportional, but indirectly your sales, your reputation, everything is good. You do not even have to look at the specification and say that, okay, this is a mismatch. You are not returning any products. And if you look at, compared to Amazon, others, there are a lot more return percentage is more. Why? Because you ordered for something, but it was not the right specification. That's why you had to return. So those are the things that you cannot measure at one point in time, but over a period of time, 3 to 5 years, you would see that what is the business benefit that you got out of it. And sometimes it is measurable, sometimes it is not measurable, but that's an advantage that you have been given by implementing the right data quality and governance.
It's a great point. I mean, it can be a source of competitive advantage. It's data is an important asset. It's becoming more and more important to organizations. It's always been important, but now
Right.
with the advent of analytics and BI and AI and all that stuff, data is more important than ever. And speaking of AI, here's a question on LinkedIn from Mode. Mode says, "Can data management be automated by AI?" So how do you see AI affecting data management in general, data migrations and
I
all that stuff?
I think it has changed already. So data management can be augmented or automated by AI, but not everything. That is something, if it is a product data, probably it needs a little bit of human intervention because it's a technical data. But if it is maybe a vendor data, it can be automated. If it is customer data, it can be automated because there are entity resolution models out there. There are different ML machine learning models out there to identify the right customer, go and source it, check your location, your other contact details, and all of that, because all that can be automated. Whatever human used to take probably a couple of days to verify or validate a vendor, now AI can give you that decision making within maybe a few minutes. And that's where I say that you need to bring in automation as part of your data management and data governance. If you are not doing it, it's not going to help. I'll just give you one example. There's a large organization where to create 100 records, they used to take 3 days. Now with the introduction of automation and our software, they could do exactly the same job in less than an hour. I mean, see what is the value that AI is bringing. Again, the decision is not being given to AI. AI is there to help you, improve the accuracy and then put forward, okay, these are the things. What is the decision that you must take? So at the end of the day, the product master or the product manager is making the decision, but on all the insights that AI is giving. And that's where I say that it must be a differentiating factor.
Right. Yeah. That's a great point. Now, what about we haven't talked yet about data security and compliance, because you have two competing issues. You have, one is data accessibility. You want people to have
Right.
access to data and be able to make use of the data. But then you also, on the other side of the equation, you have security and compliance and protecting that data. So how do you find organizations balancing those two potentially competing priorities overall?
I think it's actually, first of all, it's a very, very complex decision.
Hmm.
Why? Because every human being would like to have access to every data set and every data element, be it curiosity, be it authority, be it ownership, be it whatever you call. So
Right.
every human being. So that's where these CDO office, I mean, Chief Data Officer's office, must determine, saying that from the compliance perspective, from the governance perspective, from the risk factor perspective, that is where this whole GRC has come in, saying that this data element, okay, who must have access to it and how much? Because somebody might have access to employee master, but not to the payroll, because it doesn't need to be because of the compliance and the risk factors of it. So the GRC matrix and actually plays very well in terms of giving the right authority or the accessibility for the right people. And again, it all depends upon how your organization is. And if you have a smaller organization, you would have more control over it. If you have larger organization, probably you will have very little visibility about it, but both need to be balanced. And we have seen during the migration projects how many times we heard that the payroll data, it has been leaked, or somebody came to know about it, or
Mhm.
even we have seen that somebody was training the data within their organizations and their chatbots were revealing the information that should not have been. So you need to have a data access layer, and that's what we always bring in. Data access layer is the metadata that controls it, the semantics of it, syntax of it, what must be revealed, and how must it be revealed, even if it is revealing, whether it is a master data, whether it is, what is it that you are giving it back to it, whether it is derived data. So there are a lot of ifs and buts around that. But Eric, data access layer is must. Without going through the data access layer, you should not allow anybody. And that data access layer should set up the right authority over each and every data element, not even data set, each and every data element.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And it's, as you're describing that dynamic, it, it occurs to me that, we're coming back to a common theme here around data governance, where there's sort of like, there's the top down approach to data
Yeah,
management, where,
yeah,
CEOs or executives might have a certain vision of what data should look like or what data they do or don't want to bring over. But then the people that are actually executing the project, they're the ones that have to deal with the resistance that comes
yeah,
from, like,
yeah,
for example, it's going to be a lot easier for me to have complete access to all the data. Like you mentioned, it's going to be a lot
yeah,
easier for me to just bring over all the old legacy data, even if it's dirty, just
Yeah,
because I'm
yeah,
used to it and I'm comfortable with it, even though it's dirty. I'm comfortable with it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
how do you
yeah.
bridge that gap between what the vision is like at the high level of the organization down to the boots on the ground, the front lines, the people that actually want the data and maybe are going to resist the idea of having a clean core or taking the time to invest in cleaning up the data? You know, do you
Right.
see that disconnect happen often from like top of the
Yeah,
organization down to the bottom?
it does. It does. And that's why what we do is for us, it's the data stewards that makes, the right decisions.
Mm,
But we take all the input from the data stewards and we take that to the executive management or a board level or the C level. We said that this is what we have, really understood and this is what we have discovered. Now, what is your vision? What do you want to do? Now, actually, I would like to combine all of this thing into a shared service, and I do not want to have my data spread across all the organizations, decentralized. Fantastic. Then we will override the data stewards. We say that, guys, we are going for a shared services wherein we are going to have people who would understand and handle multiple set of data. But if the CEO says that no, 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 let it be there at the plant level or a business unit level, let them manage it, then the decision is there. So our job is to study, during the discovery phase and the diagnosis phase, and we say that this is what are your practices, and now you have got two decisions that which one you want to embark on, and it all depends upon the vision.
right, right. So how do you see executives, like when we think about the executive steering committee or just the executive team in general, how should they be involved in data governance and data management? Should they be involved, or if so, what should that look like?
I personally feel that they need to be governed because most of the executives they say, oh, this is what I want. But if you do not tell them, if you are making this decision, 1 year down the line, this is what is going to happen, and it will be a bigger challenge for you to solve. And most of the times, it is because of unawareness they make those decisions, Eric. And their intention is always good because they also want to take the organizations forward. But just because they do not have the visibility and awareness and the impact of that 1 or 2 years down the line, they make those decisions, be it even bringing in the right tools or bringing in the right stakeholders. But if you don't do that, it's again, plan, check, do, act, that kind of thing. If you don't do it and if you don't put down smaller things around it, and then prove to them, you see, because of this governance rule, this is what has happened. What do you would like to do? No, 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 let's go back to this, or no, no, let us sustain with this, and then push everybody to the corner and enforce this. So ultimately they are the leaders, they are the leaders who are going to take the organization forward. So we leave it to them, but we will have to tell them what could be the disadvantages or advantages of that, and pros and cons. The moment they know it, they make the smarter decisions.
Right. Yeah. That's good
But
advice. And
Eric, maybe one in 20, you would also find that this is what I want, take it or leave it. But
right.
they will call you back after 2, 3 years saying that no, this is not working, guys.
That was a
Sorry,
mistake. We did it wrong.
yeah, that was a mistake. That was a mistake, and we see that.
Yeah, and I think this is a good, this segment of our conversation right now is a good,
Right.
clip for executives to hear. So if anyone's watching and you want to share just this little clip with your executive team, I think it's important for them to hear because I think it's, it seems like a lot of executives think that data is just it's a really technical in the weed sort of thing, and I don't think they fully understand the impact to the overall project.
Yeah,
I think they
yeah.
sometimes have a vision of what they think data could it should be, but then when it comes time to execute, they don't understand the
Right.
consequences that you mentioned. The things that
Yeah.
might affect them longer term, or there might be a risk that they're not aware of or not considering.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, there's one more important point. What the executives are not aware of is the ground reality, because they are always listening in from a hierarchy and
Yeah.
they don't do it. And I'll tell you one great example where we were asked to take some data, 45,000 records of material to the new system. Believe me, Eric, none of those 45,000 materials were ever opened. Even the boxes were closed for the last 5 years.
Hmm.
And who actually discovered that? We discovered that. We said that, guys, what's the history of it? Last 5 years, they did not open. Why? Because they ordered the wrong stuff and they were
Hmm.
hiding it from the management. And when the management came to know, they could at least make a decision to sell it off or, trade it off against something. But management is also, not aware of these kind of things, because your business units are somewhere, their offices are there. You sit in a corporate office and you do not have the visibility of it. But generally, that's the reason. A leader is actually walking on the ground. A leader is not just sitting in the top floor and then making the decisions. Unless he goes through that, he would not know what are those challenges.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Now here's a question from Darian on LinkedIn. What role does master data or what role do master data management tools play in improving data quality and consistency across systems?
See, let me tell you, the moment you put down a rule for a master data management or a governance, whether that rule is good or bad, Eric, the rule will be applied consistently. So either your output is bad or good. So it is better to handle that rather than mix of it. Something is bad, something is good. How are you going to do it? If you know that the rule has applied and that rule has resulted in bad quality, then you know that that rule need to be reversed and it need to be corrected. You have a corrective action. If the rule is applied and it has resulted in the right data quality, then that's the working model. But if you don't bring in data management practices, if you don't bring in a policy, if you don't bring in a rule, then every person is making a new rule on the data set.
Right.
So that's why I say that it is better to have a tool that governing it, because either it will be consistently, bad or consistently good, but it is not, consistently inconsistent.
Right. Right. That's good advice. I hadn't heard that before, but that's really good advice. Um, so as you look forward to the future of technology and digital transformation, this is where I ask you to get your crystal ball out and try and
Right.
predict the future, but which is always fun and difficult at the same time. But what trends do you see in data management and governance, particularly as it relates to ERP implementations and digital transformations?
I'm seeing most of the data migrations are becoming semi-automated, which is
Mm,
actually great. Now, just to tell you that the ECC is going for a sunset in a couple of years. Everybody knows SAP ECC. And how many customers must go for Rise with SAP to a cloud? 40,000 plus minimum. Now,
yeah.
if you divide that with the number of days, every day there must be 40 data migration projects successfully completed. Eric, I mean, do we have the capacity as human beings or consultant to do 40 migrations every day successful for the next 3 years? Probably not. That's why automation is important. So the data migrations, the tools that we have developed, the design is complemented 80%, because what is the source, ECC, what is the target, it is S4HANA. And the transformation rules will not change because the schemas are fixed unless you have a lot of legacy, the customizations, the pain that you want to take forward. That is what it is. So I say automation is there. That's one. The second thing is that the data quality is a complex subject because it all depends upon who is that stakeholder or a user who is practicing that data quality. And if you cannot augment that, help that with your co-pilots, and that's why we built a co-pilot, I mean, then why are we now calling it as a tech solution? It must not be a tech solution, it must be a analog solution. If it is a tech solution, it has to. What I'm seeing now, more trends is, Eric, and which is actually very good because people are adopting this. And there are about 8 cases that have been proven worthy enough
Mm,
of complementing the data management practices. I really love that. And Gartner has published probably 12 of them, but out of that, 8 of them are successful, such as categorization, classification, internet research complementation, and then, consolidation, deduplication. All this can be automated. And that's wonderful thing. You do not have to put your foot there. Only thing is that you have to look at the results and the process, whether it is correct or not, and move forward. And that's a really good sign, because
mm,
if we have to, Eric, manage the data that is created every day, and it, I mean, how big it is, those volumes we cannot manage as humans. That's the
right.
reason we definitely need a machine learning models.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one. The second thing what I say is that there is more adoption for industry standards. This wasn't there. The more adaptation for that, such as be it ISO standards, be it industry practices, be it taxonomies. When you are defining an asset taxonomy is there, which is as per ISO 14224, which is good. Adaptation is there. adoption is increasing for the standards, because the moment you bring in standard, interoperability is established. We don't have to worry about it. That's why standards are there. So tomorrow you are going to other system, don't worry about it. If it is as per that standard, you can move forward. So that I'm liking it really very much. And then the third one, the trend that I'm seeing is that everybody would like to have knowledge of data. This wasn't the case 3 4 years ago. Now everybody would like to be a data steward, a person with knowledge about data or specific domain of that. And this is data literacy is increasing, and that's actually a good sign.
Mm. Yeah, those are all interesting trends. And you talk about interoperability. And earlier in this interview, you were talking about how, um, the integration of data, and how you go directly to the source. You
Yeah,
want to connect directly to the source of data rather than relying on
right,
someone to put it in a
right, right,
spreadsheet or re-enter it.
right, right,
How does overall integration strategy affect data management? So in other words, you have data strategy and then you have your
right.
architecture and integration strategy over
Yeah,
here. How do you
yeah,
bring those two things together and create like a more cohesive view of how it all
yeah.
ties together?
You see, one of the things people miss is always when they are doing the integration between two systems, they always integrate only the used data elements or used data structures. That's
Mm,
a wrong thing. I say that you do, A side all columns with B side all columns, because you never know what is it that you are going to change. And the biggest challenge is that if you do not establish an ISO standard kind of data exchange, then you are going to redo it again and again and again and again.
mm,
29002 is a great standard for industrial systems automation or classification or exchange of the characteristic data, and it very clearly defines, you take the full data requirement of the source and map it with the target and then leave it there, because you never know what kind of rule is going to come in place and what kind of mapping is required. So that's why, Eric, I personally believe that if you are not looking at the standards, you are actually losing out on the interoperability in future. And what is the biggest pain these days that I'm seeing is the integration. And is it going to go away? It's not going to go away, because in fact it is going to be even more, because sometimes you need to now integrate the sensor data. Sometimes you need to integrate the stream. Sometimes you need to bring in, some of the social media data. And if you do not establish the ISO practices for exchanging the data, then you are going to redo that, and you will lose control out of
yeah, yeah. No, that's really interesting, and it's such an important thread to think about too. How you're gonna bring the integration of systems and
it. Yeah,
the legacy systems where you've got this old data, the old legacy data in it. How are you going to create that integration, and how are you going to do it in a way that doesn't just bring over bad, dirty
yeah,
data,
yeah,
that isn't
yeah,
accurate.
yeah, 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 yeah. You need to have a lot of filters there, and many a times we are seeing probably 10 different filters before we in fact look at the data, because those filters will actually throw out all the data. It's exactly like any machine that is working, the production machine. If the product is not good, it throws it out, and it's from a quality check perspective. And human beings will not be able to do that, and that's the reason we had to build in several models.
Right. Yeah. Here's an interesting summarization of what you were just talking about, Doctor. This is from Karen Kumar on LinkedIn. Says
Mhm.
data quality management and data governance truly go hand in hand, creating a robust foundation that drives accuracy, consistency, and reliability, ultimately benefiting the entire organization. Their
Wow.
parallel integration is essential for maximizing data-driven value and achieving long-term business success. So
Wow.
that's very well. That's a well said summary of what data management is and how data governance factors into to an overall
Absolutely.
digital strategy. So for those listening, just to sort of wrap this all up and to tie everything together here, for those that are listening that maybe are struggling with their data management initiatives, or they're in the middle of a digital transformation and they don't really have a good handle on their data work stream yet, or maybe they haven't thought much about it. What are some of the best ways to get started? Like, what are those one or two takeaways that you could leave us with as far as how do we get started on this data management, this data governance journey?
I say that let's start with the data discovery phase. Without doing data discovery, don't even go. I mean, data discovery and diagnosis. Again, Eric, if we have some issues with our health, we go to a doctor. Doctor doesn't just look at us and give you a prescription. And that's what the data migration, digital transformations are doing. Just they are doing it. What doctor does is diagnosis, few tests, few checks. Then only it says that, okay, you must take maybe this prescription. So I say that consultants cannot just prescribe before looking at the data and the health of the data and diagnosis of it. So check your data. What is the data that is really meaningful? What is the data, whether it qualifies for the data quality or not, and then start with that. Again, if you really would like to know about data strategy, you can get in touch with us, or you can get in touch with those guys who are in the data strategy world or data practice world, and we will give you a roadmap. This is what you must do, because it's a recipe, Eric. It is not something that you can apply on everything, but it is a high level recipe. We have a I vision data transformation framework with 7 different pillars, 7 different steps, what you must do in each step, what are the sub steps for that. Unless you go through that, you won't be able to actually put down a data migration or data transformation project for a successful journey.
Yeah, you need to start with that understanding of what you have. What is
Yeah,
the current state of your data and what do you want it to be in the future post transformation or post ERP implementation? So that's
right.
really, really good advice. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for your time here today. This was a great conversation, and we could spend a lot more time talking about it. But I think this is a good starting point, a good overview. How can people connect with you and learn more about PiLog? Like, what are some resources you could leave us with here today?
We have very simple website, piloggroup.com, and we are active on social media. There's a lot of thought leadership stuff that is coming out. You can search for Imad Syed. You can connect with me. And PiLog Group has got a LinkedIn, other social media handles as well. They can easily connect with me. But Eric, thank you very much. I really enjoyed talking on this topic, and you can see that we can even continue for several hours.
Yes.
But because we both are passionate about these things. But I think it was a good conversation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you sharing your insights. And this is a fascinating topic. It's such a relevant topic today, too. And thank you to the audience for the great questions. We had a really good turnout here today and great questions and engagement from the audience. So thank you. It's why we do these live podcast interviews, is so we can get your questions and get your engagement. So we really appreciate you doing that. Again, just as a follow up, this interview will get edited. We'll add some more content to it, and it'll be released as a full episode of Transformation Ground Control podcast, which you can find at transformationgroundcontrol.com. Every Wednesday, we have new episodes. This particular episode with this interview will be released, I believe, in 2 weeks from tomorrow. So be sure to keep an eye out at transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can also go to that same website to see all the past episodes of the show as well. So thank you for being here today. We do these live interviews the same time, same place every week. So look forward to seeing you next time on the show. And thank you again, Dr. Syed. Really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric, and best wishes to you. You're
Yes.
doing fantastic job, and keep doing that. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you to the audience. Have a great week, and we will